Welcome to Starbound, where every star tells a story. What happens when the underestimated humans take on the low-gravity challenges of the Mars Olympics? Let's get into the story. The intergalactic Olympic Stadium buzzed with an energy that pulsed far beyond the boundaries of Earth. Light from 1,000 alien suns ricocheted off walls of polished chrome and luminescent crystal. Colossal banners depicted species the human onlookers knew only from grainy broadcasts. Towering reptilian brutes, multi-limbed creatures scuttling alongside elegant beings glowing with bioluminescence. It was an assault on the senses, a testament to the galaxy's vast diversity, making the small cluster of Earth's athletes feel insignificantly mundane. Sam Patel tightened the strap on his worn running shoes. The faded logo of his old university was a stark contrast against the pristine uniforms of the surrounding teams. He inhaled, seeking the familiar scent of the well-used gym. But the air was a sterile cocktail of unfamiliar chemicals and the sharper tang of alien sweat. A hush fell over the stadium as the opening ceremony began. It was a dazzling spectacle. Holographic displays wove narratives of cosmic battles and ancient rivalries over the central arena. Yet as the announcer's amplified voice boomed across the space, a single spotlight settled on the human contingent. And now... The announcer's chitin-clicking voice carried a mocking edge that transcended any translation device.
We welcome the athletes of Earth, a species whose evolutionary strategy seems to be a stubborn refusal to develop any useful physical traits.
Laughter echoed through the stadium. The harsh hisses of reptilian species, the deep guttural rumbles from towering quadrupeds. Sam felt his teammates shift. Kwame's easy smile faltered. Chenli's jaw tightened beneath his sleek mask. Well, they're certainly in for a surprise. Gabriel's voice cut through the noise, a whisper meant to be private yet laced with steel. He met Sam's gaze, the unspoken question hanging between them. Would this Mars invitation be their shot at redemption, or just the latest humiliation in a long history of athletic failures? Sam couldn't answer Gabriel, and not just because of the roar of the crowd surging around them. Truth be told, he'd asked himself the same question every day since receiving the cryptic summons for the first ever Mars Olympics. After all, humans excelled in being the cosmic laughingstock. Their frail forms were no match for the strength of the Gorloth, or the speed of the insectoid Tercaxians. But Mars wasn't the vast arena of the regular games. Mars? That was different. Let them laugh, Kwame muttered, though his infectious grin had dimmed. Soon enough, we'll turn those jeers into cheers. Sam eyed the gangly parkour enthusiast. His confidence bordered on delusion at times, yet the same unyielding optimism had pulled him out of the crumbling urban slums of Accra. Perhaps that kind of blind faith was precisely what their team needed right now. The ceremony blurred around him as they made their ceremonial lap. Each species was a study in evolutionary specialization, elongated limbs for sprints, imposing musculature for shows of strength, even armored carapaces for barbaric combat events. Humans, with their soft skin and unremarkable bipedal frames, looked like unprepared children wandering into a war zone. A shadow fell across Sam. He looked up, his gaze snagging on the segmented appendages of a Tercaxian, its iridescent exoskeleton shimmering under the lights. 4 multifaceted eyes peered down at him, then clicked in unison, a chilling, insectile assessment.
Specimen too small,
it rasped through a translator.
No challenge for the hunt.
The words echoed, the whisper swirling in Sam's mind. Was this it? Were they only here to play the part of sacrificial lambs while other species flaunted their biological superiority? He clenched his fists. No. The invitation had been specific. The low gravity of Mars meant a level playing field, a chance to rewrite the narrative. But the question remained, could they adapt fast enough to become more than the galaxy's punchline? The transport vessel was a claustrophobic nightmare. Cramped quarters, the constant hum of life support systems, and the growing doubts of the team made Sam long for the vast, empty stadiums. At least there, the jeers of the crowd were less invasive than the lingering stares of pity and whispered assessments of their chances from the support staff. It didn't help that their training regime felt utterly illogical. They sprinted endless laps around the ship's corridors, only to collapse into handstands against the bulkheads. Chen Li, usually a silent, focused presence, even grumbled. "Pointless exertion. Why waste energy?" "Trust me," Sam panted, his voice echoing oddly in the recycled air. "You'll see. If his calculations were correct, and they had to be, damn it. Everything hinged on them being correct." He stole a glance at Gabriel, their captain. The no-nonsense veteran kept a stoic face, but Sam caught the flicker of unease in his eyes. Even the ever-present belief of Kwame was laced with a nervous edge these days. The team was fracturing, and even Mars seemed a lifetime away. It was one of those shared moments of despair that had happened. An alarm blared, followed by a series of jolts that threw them off balance. Someone shouted a warning about a malfunction and a possible breach. Chen Li reacted first, not with a scream, but a practiced handspring, the momentum sending him airborne. He twisted his lithe body with a gymnast's impossible grace, snagging a handrail near the ceiling. Kwame, a blur of motion, was beside him a second later, his long frame propelling him upward like he had sprouted wings. His booming laugh echoed through the chaos.
"Whoa, now this is something I can work with."
Sam grinned, his own fear replaced with a surge of adrenaline. He understood. Years of training under Earth's gravity had conditioned them to suppress their natural instincts to stay grounded. Now, with every leap and twist, they felt a lightness they hadn't known was possible. The malfunction was fixed, the routine exercises resumed. But something had changed. As they landed, it was with softer impacts, with a newfound agility. For the first time, Mars didn't just feel like a chance for survival. It felt like an opportunity. The shift was subtle, yet undeniable. Sam felt it in the way they moved, a spring in their steps previously dulled by resignation. Kwame's laughter, previously edged with a strain, now held a genuine delight, and even Chen Li's stoic facade was cracking. Their training sessions became less about endurance and more about exploration. Handstands weren't a punishment, but a way to gauge the shift in their center of gravity. Running wasn't about speed, but about mastering sudden changes in momentum. Even Sam's rigid calculations loosened, making space for playful experimentation. He found he could predict the trajectory of his body with an ease he'd never felt on Earth, allowing for daringly long strides and leaps that sent him soaring across the ship's corridors. It was thrilling, but it was the flicker of surprise in the eyes of the alien staff that made the difference. They'd grown used to the humans' pitiful displays. This was something new. News from Earth filtered in slowly on the long journey. It was a world in turmoil, reports of riots and increased political tension seeping through the garbled comm channels. Humanity, it seemed, wasn't just fighting for respect on the galactic stage anymore. They were fighting for their place among the stars. The weight of that knowledge pressed heavily on them. "We have to win," Gabriel said one night, the strain evident in his usually unwavering voice. "Not for ourselves, but for all of them." The words hung in the cramped space. Sam saw the determination blaze in Kwame's eyes, the grim set of Chen Li's jaw. They were no longer just athletes. They were ambassadors, soldiers even, shouldering the hopes of a fragile world. The burden wasn't just about physical prowess anymore, but about proving something far deeper. They reached the Mars transfer station, a cluster of hastily assembled pods and docking bays against the backdrop of the rust-red planet. Its desolate beauty was an echo of what was at stake. The other teams, veterans of the intergalactic circuit, viewed them with a mix of pity and amusement. Sam caught sight of a familiar insectile form, Exerth, the mocking voice of the galaxy. I clicked past, their disdainful gaze dismissing the humans in a blink.
"Well,"
Kwame grinned,
"at least someone's consistent."
The Mars Olympic Village reflected the rushed nature of the event. Structures were prefabricated and functional, lacking the architectural grandeur of its Earth counterpart. Yet there was a certain charm to the haphazard layout, like a frontier town springing up in the alien landscape. It was also remarkably quiet. While athletes of different species trained and mingled with easy familiarity, a tense silence surrounded the human contingent. They weren't ostracized, exactly, but they moved with a wary isolation born from years of being the outsider. That isolation fueled a desperate focus in their pre-game training. The Mars Olympic Stadium, smaller but still impressive, loomed with its rust-colored dome. They sprinted across the loose Martian soil, mimicking the upcoming races where every ounce of kinetic energy had to be calculated and controlled. They swung and vaulted across obstacle courses specifically built to accommodate the low-gravity conditions. They even practiced, of all things, yoga, with Sam leading his initially skeptical teammates into stretches that had never felt easier. News reports about escalating tensions on Earth trickled in. They heard about uprisings, protests against the cost of sending losers to embarrass humanity further. Yet there were also smaller stories. Children playing make-believe Mars Olympics in dusty streets. Hopeful messages beamed into the void. "We bring two worlds to the arena," Gabriel reminded them after one particularly bleak news cycle. "The one out there, and the one we carry in here." He gestured first at the red planet beyond their window, and then at his chest. Those internal battles would be the ones that truly mattered. As Kwame put it bluntly one day, "All fine and good if we can jump like gazelles on Mars, but if our heads ain't in the game, we're still gonna lose." 3 days before the games, word spread of sabotage, training equipment damage, food stores mysteriously tampered with. While no single alien species was blamed, the suspicion hung in the air. Someone wanted the humans gone before the competition even began. Sam felt a cold fury twist in his gut. It wasn't just about the games anymore. This was an attack on their basic right to even compete. The others shared his outrage. Kwame's boisterous laughter was replaced by a grim determination, while Chen Li moved with a tensed, coiled energy. But anger, Sam knew, was a luxury they couldn't afford. This was another test of their adaptability, their resilience. He huddled with the team, his scientist mind seeking solutions. "Repairs," he concluded, outlining a plan. "We can cannibalize spare parts, improvise where needed. It'll be patchwork, but functional." Kwame's parkour expertise came in surprisingly useful. He scampered across the Martian landscape in search of discarded materials, returning with odd scraps of metal and discarded tech components that held unexpected promise. Chen Li, with his gymnast flexibility, squeezed into cramped compartments and tight spaces, rewiring systems and fashioning makeshift tools. They worked with an intensity they hadn't summoned since those desperate initial days on the transport ship. Gabriel, as always, was the pillar. He negotiated with uncooperative supply officers, smoothed over ruffled feathers with his calm diplomacy, and most importantly, held them together when their spirits flagged. By the eve of the opening ceremony, their equipment wasn't perfect, but it was usable. The attack aimed at demoralizing them, instead did the opposite. It forged a bond stronger than any training session could.
Hi, sorry to interrupt the story, but a lot of you who are listening right now aren't actually subscribed. It's completely free and allows our stories to pop up on your feed much more often. If you're enjoying the story, please consider clicking the subscribe button underneath the video right now. Back to the story.
Sam stood on the dusty Martian field, staring up at the twin moons painted against the inky sky. They weren't just athletes anymore. They were warriors, fighting not just for medals, but for the right to be part of the fight. "Well," Kwame grinned, flashing his infectious smile, "looks like we're playing this game on hard mode, huh?" Chen Li nodded, a flicker of something like respect warming his usually icy gaze. Gabriel, his voice firm, echoed Sam's own thoughts. "They pushed us. Now it's our turn to push back." The Mars Olympic opening ceremony was a stark contrast to its Earth counterpart. Smaller in scale, it lacked the grandiosity, It held a raw, unpolished energy that suited this frontier setting. Humans had expected jeers, or even worse, indifference. Instead, they were met with a rumbling silence as they entered the arena, the rust-colored sand swirling beneath their feet. Was this it? A brief respect for their audacity, followed by pity for the inevitable defeat? Then, something remarkable happened. From one corner of the stadium, a chant arose. It began with a group of young Tarkaxians, their voice harsh, guttural, yet carrying an undeniable rhythm. Other species took it up, the noise spreading like a wave. Sam couldn't understand the words, but the intent was clear. It wasn't a chant of support, or even mockery. It was a challenge, a primal demand for the competition to begin. Kwame whooped, throwing his head back. "Oh, I like this crowd already!" Chen Li's lips twitched in an approximation of a smile. Even Sam felt the thrill course through his veins. The games hadn't started yet, but they'd already forced a change in perception. Then came the first event, a long-distance sprint across a field studded with obstacles. The Gorloth, with their thick, powerful legs, were the clear favorites, but the low gravity fundamentally altered the equation. Sam pushed off the starting block. His first stride felt impossibly long. His body propelled with unexpected force. He cleared the hurdles in leaps that would have been impossible on Earth, landing gracefully in a spray of sand. The crowd erupted in a roar, not the polite applause of past tournaments, but a raw, visceral sound. He saw wide-eyed Tarkaxians and the stoic Gorloth rise to their feet, their surprise mirroring his own. He didn't win gold. A hulking Gorloth brute outmuscled him in the final stretch, but it didn't matter. That single race changed everything. They weren't there to simply participate anymore. They were there to win. And for the first time, someone besides themselves believed it too. Kwame won bronze for an obstacle course that looked like it had been dreamt up by his parkour-loving brain. The crowd, first skeptical, then roaring with delight, saw him defy gravity, his long limbs catapulting him through the course with a speed that belied his size. He finished, chest heaving, his grin stretching from ear to ear. The medals didn't matter as much as what he felt, a sense of belonging, of being appreciated for his skill, not judged for its lack on his homeworld. Chen Li was a revelation in the balance of precision events. Sam's unorthodox yoga training paid off as the gymnast found an uncharacteristic stillness in the low gravity. He held poses that seemed to violate the laws of physics, his every movement deliberate and controlled. Spectators initially scoffed at the events themselves, deeming them too slow, too subtle for interspecies interest. But as Chen Li bent and twisted through the air, achieving perfect scores, that notion crumbled. The crowd whispered a single word amongst themselves, a word filled with a newfound respect. Humans. Sam's own event, the long-distance marathon, became a showdown. His endurance, built through countless laps, pushed him into the top 5. It wasn't a medal round, but the finish was heart-poundingly close. Gorloth warriors, used to easily crushing weaker species, glanced at him with narrowed eyes. His human form, previously unremarkable, now held the promise of a challenge. But they just weren't winning medals, they were winning hearts. Children of other species clamored for autographs, something the team hadn't even considered possible. Newscasts switched from ridicule to begrudging analysis. Even Exerth, the ever-present harbinger of disdain, had to adjust.
The results are unexpectedly adequate.
They conceded with a clicking hiss that held the barest hint of surprise. Yet they didn't dominate. The Earth team suffered losses, some of them brutal. But they lost with grit, with a refusal to back down that resonated deeper than their wins. It was this sprint that began to truly shift the tides. As the games wore on, an unexpected camaraderie blossomed. Sam saw Kwame giving pointers to a nervous young Tarkaxian athlete before the hurdles. Chen Li's stoic facade cracked open as he helped a Gorloth competitor bandage an injured leg after a particularly brutal fall. Even Gabriel, after a tense showdown in a strategy-based event, gave a nod of acknowledgement to his reptilian opponent. "I think," Sam hesitantly told his team one evening. I think we're changing things. It wasn't just about victories anymore. Other underestimated contenders, lithe insectoids overlooked in power events, short-legged quadrupeds disadvantaged in races, started believing they too could defy expectations. The arena filled with an infectious energy, a sense that perhaps the old hierarchies were not as unshakable as they seemed. This change wasn't always welcomed. Rumors of disgruntled sabotage grew louder, with whispers of established powers feeling threatened by an upset to the status quo. But even fear couldn't drown out the thrill of the unexpected. The rising belief that the Mars Olympics was more than just entertainment. It was a stage for change. They expected us to go down quietly, Gabriel said, his voice grim. Well, let's give them something to really worry about. The last day of the games arrived in a whirlwind of energy. The humans weren't favorites to dominate the medal count, but they were contenders, their presence injecting a new excitement. The finale was a team event, a chaotic relay incorporating skills from every discipline. It was pure spectacle, the kind of thing audiences crave, and the humans had a plan. Sam, utilizing his analytical skills, had pinpointed the strengths of each team member and weaknesses in the overall design of the course. Kwame's bursts of speed would compensate for slower starts. Chen-Li's agility could cut corners where others were bound by their bulk, and surprisingly, even Gabriel's leadership had a role to play. His calm communication could prevent the chaotic delays that plagued multi-species collaboration. They wouldn't win on raw talent alone. Their weapon was their humanness, the grit, the teamwork, the relentless adaptability. The last stretch of the relay course was a narrow, twisting tunnel carved into the Martian rock. Sam could hear the crowd chanting, a deafening roar of diverse voices all blending into one primal sound. He was the anchor runner, taking the baton from Chen-Li, who had somehow navigated an obstacle with the impossible precision of a spider on a silken thread. He exploded into the tunnel. Every muscle burned with exhaustion, but the finish line was tantalizingly close. Just ahead, a lumbering Gorloth and a sleek Tarkaxian locked in a ferocious sprint for gold. His mind raced. He couldn't outpower them, couldn't match their speed. He was human, damn it. His strength lay elsewhere. The tunnel narrowed, forcing his opponents to slow their pace. Sam spotted his chance. A crack in the wall, barely wide enough to squeeze through. It was insane, reckless, and their only hope. He veered off, slammed his shoulder against the rock with a grunt of pain, and forced his way through the narrow opening. It was a desperate gamble, but it paid off. He burst out of the tunnel on the other side, a step ahead of his stunned opponents. A final sprint, his lungs screaming, the roar of the crowd pushing him to the finish line. Then he was collapsing, his whole body a trembling ache as a mass of cheering bodies piled onto him. Kwame's booming laughter echoing above the chaos told him all he needed to know. They'd done it. Humans had won that relay, claimed gold against impossible odds. Exearth, for once, seemed almost speechless.
Their victory, it appears statistically improbable.
Their voice finally rasped, then in a tone dripping with disbelief.
Yet the data cannot be undisputed.
The news of their win reached Earth quicker than any ship could travel. It wasn't just sports news, it was global news. Sam watched the grainy images of celebration erupting on his home planet. People dancing in the streets, hugging strangers, faces streaked with joyful tears. Suddenly, those political tensions and economic disputes seemed a world away. The Mars Olympics ended not with a crushing defeat the galaxy had predicted, but with a team of humans hoisted high on the shoulders of alien athletes. As Gabriel accepted the trophy, its strange form glinting in the Martian sun, it was clear. They had won medals, yes, but far more importantly, they'd won respect. Not for some miraculous evolutionary change, but by being unapologetically, stubbornly, and resiliently human. The transport vessel home was a stark contrast to the tense silence of their first journey. Their fellow passengers weren't just support staff now, but comrades. The athletes of the other worlds, once viewed with awe, were now familiar faces, sharing jokes and stories with the upstarts from Earth. Kwame never stopped talking, his infectious excitement buzzing through the cramped ship. Chen Li, usually so solitary, showed a younger, nervous athlete some of the stretching techniques that had served him so well. Even Gabriel, beneath his stoic exterior, held a quiet satisfaction. When they reached the Earth transfer station, they were greeted not with pity or hesitant cheers, but with a genuine hero's welcome. The roar of the crowd was the sweetest sound Sam had ever heard, but what resonated deeper were the individual voices he plucked out.
My kid says he wants to be just like you when he grows up,
a teary-eyed man shouted at Sam.
You showed him! You showed them all!
Bellowed a towering man with a Gorloth tattoo on his bicep.
Thank you,
a soft, accented voice whispered at his side. Turning, Sam saw a Tarkaxian translator, their multifaceted eyes fixed on him with a strange new light. They left the station as a team, of course, but also as something more. They were ambassadors, pioneers, proof that the human spirit could defy any odds, even the vast emptiness of space itself. The stadiums and crowds blurred as they made their way towards the final shuttle home.
So,
Kwame grinned, slinging an arm around Chen Li in an easy display of newfound camaraderie that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago.
Anyone up for a rematch next games? Maybe on a planet with twice the gravity. Sounds like a fun challenge, right?
Chen Li rolled his eyes but cracked a smile. Gabriel, the ever-present pragmatist, sighed. We have reports to write, appearances to schedule. Don't get ahead of yourself. Yet Sam saw it in their faces, the spark that burned brighter than any metal. The Mars Olympics had changed them, changed Earth, changed the galaxy, maybe just a little. But that change was only the beginning. Their victories weren't the destination, but the first step on a much longer journey. And what a journey it would be.